What's up, guys? Derek here with Tap and Turn Gaming, coming at you today with an EDH deck tech. Today's deck tech is for a subscriber requested deck brought to us by Tyler Yarber, and he wanted to see what we could do with Dralnu Lich Lord. So that's what we're going to do. Now, Dralnu is a blue-black 5-cost 3/3 zombie lord. He does have a downfall of whenever he's dealt damage, you have to sacrifice that many permanents, but hopefully you want to play around that. His main ability is that you can tap him to give a sorcery or instant in your graveyard flashback equal to its mana cost. And then, like flashback, if you cast it, you have to exile it. It's a very potent ability that allows you to reuse all your spells again if you need to, when you need to, at instant speed. If they are a sorcery, you do have to cast it as a sorcery. But the fact that he can give them that whenever you want to via his ability being instant speed, it's very nice. I used to have a standard deck with him, and it was a very, very potent deck, so I can attest to the sheer power that this deck has. You figure you're going against your opponent's 99 card deck with your 99 card deck, where you can turn your 10 counter spells into 20, and your 10 kill spells into 20, and your 4 sweepers into 8. Very, very potent. So let's take a look at the lands first. It's a pretty basic land package. We have a Bajuka Bog, a Cabal Coffers, a Creeping Tar Pit, Dark Slick Shores, Dimir Aqueduct, Dimir Guildgate, Drowned Catacomb, Evolving Wilds, 10 Islands, Minamo School at Water's Edge so we can untap a legendary permanent, Nykthos Shrine to Nyx, Polluted Delta, Sunken Hollow, 10 Swamps, Tainted Isle, Temple of Deceit, Terramorphic Expanse, Talaria West, Urbog Tomb of Yawgmoth, and Watery Grave. For Planeswalkers, we decided only to go with one Teferi Temporal Archmage, because he brings a lot of fun to the table. His +1 lets you look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one in your hand, put the other on the bottom, so it gives you that little bit of excel. His -1 lets you untap up to 4 permanents, so that could be land so we can have counter mana free, as well as untapping our general to be able to use his ability multiple times. And then ultimately we can -10 him to be able to use all of our, we get an emblem so that all of our Planeswalker abilities can be used at instant speed basically, even on our opponent's turn. And that makes for a very fun Planeswalker, rather. If you take a look at the sorceries, we have Crix of Fate for a sweeper. Crix of Fate here for a sweeper. Damnation, Extinguish All Hope, and then Ruinous Path. So we have 3 sweepers in here that we can essentially turn into 6 because of our general. And we have Ruinous Path that we can copy as well. For enchantments, Dictate of Erebos, Dream Halls, Eye of the Storm, Oversold Cemetery. So Dream Halls is very nice with Dralnu because we can discard a card to cast a card for free if it shares a color with it, and then we can tap Dralnu to cast a sorcery instant that we may have discarded this way. That's very, very fun to do. Then we run Eye of the Storm because we have a card in here that will work with that to lock out our opponents. I hadn't mentioned it yet, but this deck is more of a sort of lockout style deck within you just control everything as far as the board, their hand, everything, and then from that point on you just do whatever you want to do to win. So then we're going to move on to the artifacts. Excuse me. Altar of the Brood. This will make sense later on, but whenever another permanent comes into play, enters the battlefield under our control, each opponent mills a card. So it's pretty fun. You generate 10 tokens, they mill 10 cards. You put a land into play, and they have to they mill a card even if you put a land in. So it's really, really good. Darksteel Plate, we want to give our general indestructible. Dimir Keyrune, Dimir Signet, Dimir Cluestone, the 3 of them. All just for that little bit of mana rare for the appropriate colors. Then we have Shield of Caldra for more indestructible. We have Soul Ring. Staff of Domination because this card is just bananas. Absolutely bananas. The ability it has is that you can untap Staff of Domination, or gain a life, or untap a creature, or tap a creature, or draw a card. It's really, really good. And 1,000-Year Elixir, so that the same turn that Dralnu comes in, we can use his ability. So then we're going to go on to the instants now. As you can see, we run 22 instants, which in essence turns into 44 instants. But we have Capsize, Commandeer, Corpse Dance, Counterspell, Cyclonic Rift, Darkness, Delay, Dismember, Dissipate, Fairy Trickery, Ghostly Flicker, Go for the Throat, Hero's Downfall, Murder, Mystical Teachings, Reality Shift, Remand, Spell Shrivel, Sudden Death, Sudden Spoiling, Victim of Night, and Void Shatter. So a couple things I want to go over with these. I mean, it's a pretty basic package. You can see what I did with it. Victim of Night I have in here because I feel that is a phenomenal removal spell. For 2 mana, even though it's double black, you can destroy any creature in the game except for 3 specific creature types. Now, you don't see many werewolves. I wouldn't say you see a ton of vampires. You see a fair amount of zombies, but then your opponent would have to have them to make the spell less good. So this is a very, very phenomenal removal spell, and I think it's highly underrated. Sudden Spelling is there as a pseudo fog because all the opponent's creatures become 0/2 and lose all their abilities, as well as Darkness is our actual fog, so we can fog up to 4 times if need be. And then we have just, your sort of generic spells. You see, I run a lot of counters. I run Void Shatter, Spell Shrivel. What else do we have in here? Where are they? Fairy Trickery, Dissipate, Delay, Counterspell, Remand. The point of the counterspells is obviously the counter, but I went with more of the exile so that it really is a countered spell. Void Shatter, Spell Shrivel, Dissipate, and Fairy Trickery all exile the spell when they cast. Now then we also have Delay. Delay is not as good as a counter, but if we have Teferi out, who's one of our creatures, when we counter that spell, if Teferi's on the board, when the last time counter is removed, then it would come in. If Teferi's out, it just doesn't, because it can't be played. So now we're going to go on to the creatures and you'll see what I'm talking about. So we're running Aberrant Overlord because he'll bring in a bunch of guys. Arcanus the Omnipotent to draw a bunch of cards. Circu because when we play our spells, we want to remove their stuff from the game. Clever Impersonator because he can clone anything. Deadeye Navigator because, well, he's Deadeye Navigator. Deluvian Primordial because why not? Draining Whelk to counter all the things. Fate Stitcher to untap maybe our General, maybe our Arcanus, maybe something fun. Geth, Lord of the Vault, Grave Titan, Magus of the Coffers, Ona, Queen of the Fae, Phantasmal Image, Phyrexian Ingester, Phyrexian Metamorph, Sakashimi the Imposter, which Sakashimi is a really good clone, which is why she's $10, in that you can clone your General, and because Sakashimi actually keeps her own name as she says in her ability, you can clone legends with her and not kill each other, because she will still remain Sakashimi the Imposter, even if she clones Dralnu, causing the legend roll to not kick in. And that is a very powerful ability if you have 2 people that can play your spells from the graveyard. Sepulchral Primordial to res all the things. Shieldred for a little bit of control. Teferi Mage of Zhalfir because he is awesome. There's a reason why he's $13. For any of you that don't know what he does, he's a 5-cost 3/4 with Flash. As long as he's on the board, all of our creature spells have Flash. And each opponent can only cast spells whenever they can cast a sorcery. So what that means is as long as Teferi's out, if we cast Delay, that spell is permanently countered. And if we have Teferi out and we have Eye of the Storm out, whenever our opponents cast a spell, it's automatically countered. They don't get to do any of the copies because he prevents all that because it's not sorcery. It's very powerful. Those 2 spells together are very, very powerful. Then we have Undead Alchemist, and he's really, really fun. And Venser Shaper Savant. So that's more or less the entire deck. A lot of the good synergy we have is that if we have Undead Alchemist out, as well as Altar of the Brood, what will happen is we play, say, a Bojuka Bog, and we play a Cabal Coffers, that's a land. That's going to kick off Altar of the Brood to mill. If they mill a creature, Undead Alchemist is going to let us put a creature token into play. When we put that creature token into play, it's going to kick off Altar of the Brood again. So then if they mill another creature, it's going to kick off Undead Alchemist again, which will kick off Altar of the Brood again. It's a very powerful free synergy. Another piece of good synergy we have is if you have down Magus of the Coffers and you have down Staff of Domination, with enough mana, you can generate infinite mana. And how that works is you tap Magus of the you tap 2 mana in Magus of the Coffers to add black to your mana pool for each swamp. So let's say we have down 8 swamps. So we tap him, we get 8 mana. Okay, so now we have Staff of Domination down with 8 mana available. We use 3 of that and tap the staff to untap our Magus of the Coffers. So now we have still 5 floating. We use 1 of those 5 to untap the staff itself. Now we have 4 floating. Then of those 4 floating, we use Magus again to use, now we have 2 floating. But when we tap him, we're going to add in back that original 8, so now we're up to 10. So every cycle of that will add 2 more mana to our mana pool, generating infinite black mana. Now, it will only really let us generate black mana because that's all he has, but we can really benefit from that. Once we have infinite black mana, we could exile their entire library with Ona. We could also res infinite creatures with Geth, because when we res a creature with Geth, whatever creature we res, they have to mill for an equal amount of its mana cost, causing more creatures to get in the yard. We can then res more creatures, res more creatures, res more creatures. So those are very fun. Some other nice little synergy we have is Deadeye Navigator with Draining Whelp to counter all the things, or Deadeye Navigator with Venser Shaper Savant to bounce all the things. So there's a lot of cool synergies in the deck, and the idea is that you get down Dralnu, you get like a Darksteel Plate on to make him indestructible. You use your little instant package over here to control the board, and then you start dropping your creatures to really lay waste to your opponents. Now, you'll notice that I have, say, Aberrant Overlord in there, and people don't really necessarily like Aberrant Overlord. I think he's a good finisher. Late game, he really is. But one of the reasons why he's in here is because, you know, let's say you have your General down, and you have your Alter the Brood down. Now you cast Aberrant Overlord, and even with those 3 cards, he's going to have a Devotion of 3. So he's going to come in with himself and then 3 Harpies. And then those 3 Harpies and himself are going to mill 4 cards. And then we now have 9 flying power on the board. So you attack with 9 flying power. That's a good chunk of your opponent's life, especially if you're locking them out via all your kill encounters. And it just becomes a very dominating game for you. So that's more or less where we went with it. You know, we didn't really go too crazy into just absolute bananas things. We want to make it sort of a fun and kooky deck. Things that, for us, things that have cool interactions are a little more fun, and that's what this is. It has some nice interactions to it. It has some nice fun things it can do. People are going to see Dralnu, and they're going to read what he does, but they're also going to see that if they hurt him, you have to exile permanents. Well, that's also why we have the token generators. That's why we have the Aberrant Overlord, and that's why we also have the Grave Titan, so that we can generate some tokens to be able to sack in case we have to. If someone deals damage to him, let's say like a lightning bolt, and we have to sacrifice 3 things, well, let's sacrifice some tokens. That's partly also why we have things like the Sepulchre Primordial and the Shield of the Whispering One, as well as, say, where is it here? The Geth Lord of the Vault, so that while we're resin creatures, we can use those res creatures to also sack if necessary to be able to feed Dralnu if he gets hurt. So those are the token generators are in there for an offensive as well as defensive measure if need be. But I've seen him in action. Once he's in action and you get a full suite of counter spells and kill spells in your hand, you can have down 2 or 3 creatures and you're going to go the distance. Because if you have down your commander, which is Dralnu, and then you have down, say, Teferi, you now have free combat phases, because as soon as you go to attacks, they can't play spells because they can't respond to anything because they can only play sorceries. And they actually can't play anything on your turn at all. So you have Teferi down, your turns are protected, and that's very, very powerful, which means the only thing that they can do is cast creatures, sorcerers, and instants in their main phase. They can't do any end-of-turn combat tricks, beginning-of-turn combat tricks, end-of-your-turn combat tricks, any combat tricks in general. It's some really, really good synergy. So I feel like if you build a deck like this, you're really going to go under the radar. People are going to see him and think he's weak. They're not really going to know what you can do. And then as soon as you play them once and you control the board, they're going to really know what's up. And that's about it. This has been Derek with Tap and Turn Gaming. This is Dralnu Lich Lord for Tyler Yarber. Hope you enjoy the deck, and we will catch you later. Thanks a lot. Like, comment, subscribe, and we will get to you soon.